A commercial flight had departed earlier that morning from Jakarta's Soekarno-Hatta International Airport, headed to Medan on the island of Sumatra. It was supposed to be a normal, 2-hour domestic flight. On board were 264 souls: men, women, children, families, newlyweds, and elders. No one expected anything more than a nap, a snack, and a safe landing. In the cockpit, Captain Fadlan Rahman sat in silence. A veteran pilot with more than 2 decades in the air, Fadlan had learned long ago that the sky demanded humility. He had seen new pilots brag and boast, only to be humbled by sudden turbulence or a failed instrument. But he had also seen experienced ones lose control, not of the aircraft, but of themselves, when panic crept in. Fadlan wasn't like that. He was quiet, gentle, always the last to speak in meetings. He rarely smiled for the cameras. His uniform was always clean, but never flashy. He was known for his calmness, not just in the air, but in life. "The man has sujud in his eyes," a fellow pilot once said, meaning that you could tell he prayed often, even if he never talked about it. He did, quietly. Every flight began with Bismillah, and every time his feet left the ground, he knew that his life and the lives of everyone on board was in the hands of Allah. The plane was now cruising over the mountainous region near North Sumatra. Below, thick green jungle stretched for miles with barely a road or town in sight. Inside the cabin, passengers chatted, laughed, and slept. Flight attendants moved gracefully up and down the aisles with carts, offering drinks and packets of peanuts. And then it happened. A sudden, sickening boom echoed through the fuselage. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't turbulence. It was something far worse. The plane jerked violently. Passengers screamed. Drinks flew through the air. The seatbelt signs blinked on with a loud ding, but it was already too late. People who weren't strapped in were tossed forward. The overhead bins popped open. A coffee pot shattered on the floor near the galley. In the cockpit, alarms began to scream. "Engine 2 failure," the co-pilot shouted. Captain Fadlan stayed still for a moment, staring at the control panel, confirming what his gut already knew. The right engine had failed completely, just gone. No thrust, no power. Then, before either pilot could react further, a second warning light flashed red. Left engine power dropping. A double engine failure. Impossible. Or at least almost impossible. "I've lost thrust on both sides," the co-pilot's voice cracked. The plane began to descend, and fast. The autopilot disconnected with a sharp beep, and the control stick jolted. They were no longer gliding. They were falling. Back in the cabin, panic set in. A child wailed in the arms of her mother. A young man gripped the seat in front of him so hard his knuckles turned white. A woman clutched her husband's hand and whispered the Shahada. Another began to sob loudly, asking God to forgive her. One passenger, a university student named Hannah, fumbled for her phone. With shaking hands, she opened a voice message to her mother. "If you get this, I love you, Umi. Please tell Abba I'm sorry for everything." She paused. The tears came before the words could. The plane shook again. Some tried to pray, but the fear was louder than faith. In the far back, a baby shrieked endlessly while a flight attendant fought to stay upright and reach her seat. Others began pulling out Qurans, rosaries, crosses, anything that brought comfort. But in the cockpit, amid the chaos and screaming alarms, there was a strange silence. Captain Fadlan was not panicking. He wasn't breathing heavily. He wasn't shouting. He was whispering, "Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil." Allah is enough for us, and He is the best one to rely on. He repeated it again and again, like a heartbeat, like oxygen. Then he spoke to his co-pilot. "We're going to glide. Don't fight the aircraft. Let it take us down. We guide it, gently." But the terrain, there's no landing strip, nothing but jungle. Fadlan didn't look away from the controls. "We're not dead yet. Look ahead. Look everywhere." They contacted air traffic control, declared an emergency, described their coordinates. Emergency services scrambled. But from where they were, over thick rainforest and steep valleys, No one could reach them fast enough. And there was no safe landing site, no runway, no roads long enough, just green jungle and rising hills. "Find me something," Fodlan said softly. Then he began to descend. Passengers could feel it now. The plane wasn't just bumping, it was dropping, fast, terrifying fast. A man stood up and shouted, "We're crashing!" The flight attendants ordered him back down. "Please sit down, please." Another woman began to wail. "Please, God, please save my daughter. Save her even if I die." Captain Fodlan's voice crackled through the intercom. "This is your captain speaking. We are experiencing engine problems and will be making an emergency landing. Please stay calm. Fasten your seatbelts tightly and listen to the instructions of the crew." He paused, then added something rarely heard in any modern-day flight. "Please pray." Then he turned the intercom off. Back in the cockpit, Fodlan finally saw it. A stretch of land, rough but long, overgrown but flat, an old military runway, likely abandoned, covered in grass and debris. But it was their only chance. "It's not built for this," the co-pilot said. "It doesn't have to be built," Fodlan replied. "It just has to hold." He adjusted the flaps, lowered the gear. Only 2 wheels came down. The third was stuck. Of course it would be. The plane was gliding now, barely. Too slow and it would stall, too fast and they'd overshoot the runway. There was no second try. There was only one attempt between life and death. And as the plane descended, Captain Fodlan whispered again, "Inna Maya Rabbi Sayadin." "Indeed, my Lord is with me. He will guide me." The trees rose fast. So did the end of the runway. The co-pilot braced. Fodlan did not. He held the stick steady, eyes forward, hands unshaking, as though someone greater than him had already taken over. The wheels hit the ground hard. The left gear buckled but held. The nose dipped. The metal screeched against the concrete. Sparks flew. The emergency flaps deployed. The tail skidded. The aircraft shook violently. It swerved, tilted. For a moment, everyone thought it would roll over and explode. But then, it stopped. Dead center. Smoke filled the cabin. People coughed, but the lights stayed on. And everyone was alive. Cheers, screams, sobs. Some people fainted, others dropped to their knees. Inside the cockpit, Captain Fodlan closed his eyes. "Alhamdulillah," he breathed. It was over. But not by his power. The news traveled fast. Miracle landing in jungle. Muslim pilot saves 264 lives. Calm captain brings aircraft down on abandoned strip. But when journalists requested interviews, Fodlan refused. He returned home to Surabaya, to his quiet neighborhood and his small mosque. He gave only one statement to a local paper. "I didn't save anyone. I only flew the plane. Allah guided it to the ground." People still talk about him. Not because he was famous, but because he reminded them that miracles still happen. That faith doesn't need to be loud. That in the sky, when there is no one else to turn to, there is always one above. Passengers from that flight hold reunions every year. They visit the place where the plane landed. Some became more religious. Some went on to memorize the Quran. Some simply lived better lives, remembering that they had been given another chance. And somewhere in the villages of Indonesia, children grow up hearing the story of the pilot who landed a falling plane, not with luck, not with skill alone, but with faith. A pilot who whispered prayers into the storm and was heard.